The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Hollingsworth, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with each of you. Before I get started on my questions, Mr. Moynihan, I wanted to let you know, Saruthi, raise your hand, Saruthi. She has been my team member for a couple of years now, but on Monday, she becomes a Bank of America team member, about which she is very, very excited. So I hope you'll take good care of her and know and recognize the talent that she has shown already in our office. I'm sure she'll do the same at Bank of America.
We will do that, and her father already works for us, so he'll take care of it.
You should have called us.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat about some of these issues today. What I'm really interested in is the state of the economy, and Mr. Budd touched a little bit upon this, but I want to delve deeper into this. We are, as of today, at a truly unprecedented pace, unwinding the quantitative easing as well as the accommodative monetary policies of the last couple of years. Though the Fed continues to talk about soft landing, I worry that this pace will lead to a harder landing than perhaps they are yet forecasting. But there are a couple ballasts to that. One, very, very strong corporate balance sheets. Earnings have been relatively resilient, but balance sheets are better than they've ever been in the S&P 500. Secondarily, household balance sheets are better than they have quite literally ever been. And you all touched on this a little bit, but one thing that I continue to notice is the tremendous amount of savings that households have, in excess of the savings they had in 2019. Have you begun to see households mobilizing that or not begun to see them mobilizing that? Because I think this is really important to real underlying economic demand going forward. In the face of some of the extra costs that are being incurred, are we seeing them dip into those savings? And with all due respect to Mr. Budd, there's a difference between a decline in savings rate and a decline in the level of savings. So I'm curious, maybe start with you, Mr. Moynihan, and then I'll ask Mr. Diamond and Ms. Frazier about the same thing.
The consumers at Bank of America have multiples of the amount of money they had pre-pandemic. And that amount is stable right now. It had been growing for the last year and a half since the last stimulus paid. It grew, kept growing, went up a little bit in tax time, came down a little bit after tax time, came down a little bit when they paid for the vacation.
Indeed.
And now it's back up. And so it's basically stable.
Understood.
And so we measure that. We put out data about it from our institute every month so you can see it.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
Consumer currently is in very good shape.
Yes.
High savings, jobs available, wages going up at the lower end. Household, even debt going up a little bit, it's still much lower than it was before. Debt service ratio is lower than they've been in 50 years.
Indeed.
So even if we go into recession, but you have to ask later, not right now, that's the good news, which is now. The bad news is later, and it's coming.
Got it. Ms. Frazier?
I think similarly, it's always a little dangerous talking about averages rather than what we see across the spectrum, but stability in the deposits and still elevated levels of spending, and equally importantly, still low credit losses across the board.
I would assume any controller or CFO worth their salt has spent the last couple of years locking in very low rates and extending out their maturity ladders to ensure they don't face upcoming maturities. Are you seeing any, either the three of you, seen any stress in corporates yet with higher rates? No? Not even in PE-sponsored kind of high leverage scenarios?
Not actual stress, but spreads are way up.
Yeah.
And the markets
Yeah.
not
They don't
strong
have,
for those types of credits, but
It's harder to transact today.
Yeah.
One of the things that we continue to talk about up here is ensuring that we are investing enough in research and development, right? We want to maintain the significant competitive advantage we have in developing new technologies, whether that's at research institutions across the country or in very innovative, smart companies across the country. One of the things we have noticed is that VC funding is declining dramatically, and some estimates there's a $1 trillion gap between what we funded in the last 5 years and what we're likely to fund in the next 5 years. And some of that is reluctance of companies to recognize valuations today versus what they might have been even 6 months ago. But I wondered if you've seen an uptick in earlier stage venture-backed funds seeking loans instead of equity, given some of the transactions and the values that they're seeing versus what they were before. Anybody want to comment?
we haven't seen evidence of it yet, but it is early days.
Yeah.
They generally don't borrow money, so it's not, you're not going to see a lot of that.
Indeed, but I had heard that more were inclined to do so rather than recognize significant down rounds in their equity valuations, right? With that, I'll yield back, Madam.